Hello everyone. I have debated with myself doing this video as tier list videos tend to get a lot of dislikes and generally just annoy people when their favorite character is put in a low tier. But I felt like I still wanted to put my opinion out there because the raid is coming up and heading into it. I wanted to show which characters I think have the best overall chance of getting through it. So just to set some rules, I'm going to be doing 2 tier lists and I'm only basing them off the Super Adaptoid OLT as it's the only real endgame content we have in the game right now and the best test of a character's strength. Also, just to point it out, I have soloed the Super Adaptoid with every hero and at this point spent a lot, and I mean a lot of time with all the characters in the OLT, so while I do have a decent amount of time with every hero, I'm sure I don't know everything about every hero, so if you do have a different opinion leave a comment below as I would love nothing more than someone to be able to convince me otherwise and maybe teach me something I don't already know. But please, I beg everyone, let's not turn this into a mass dislike hate fest, and if you have a different opinion I would love to hear why in the comments and we can have a healthy discussion about it. So, tier list 1 is going to be about the OLT mission leading up to the boss and tier list 2 is going to be for actually killing the boss itself. So, let's jump into tier list 1, which is just about clearing the mission and we aren't taking the boss into consideration. Let's just get the God of Thunder himself out the way, as I think 99% of people can agree Thor is S tier, and honestly, I was debating if we need a tier above S because Thor is crazy strong and way better than any of the other heroes. I don't think I really need to explain to most people why he is here. His damage is on another level, all his heroic abilities deal crazy damage, and the fact the OLT has a modifier causing your heroics to regenerate even faster just makes him even more of an AIM killing machine. On top of that, he can open all the prisoner cells by himself with little to no effort and can destroy the warbot super quickly with all his huge blast attacks. So, we started with S. Let's set the other end of the scale with my only D tier now. Before I put them there, let me clear something up. None of the heroes in this game are bad, and honestly you can make all of them work, but somebody has to go there, and this might annoy a lot of people because I know she seems to have a lot of people playing her, but it's Kate Bishop. Now before you go smashing that dislike button, hear me out. It's really hard to put the characters in this game in a tier list because unlike a game like Warframe for example, all the heroes in this game are actually good, and to the developers' credit the characters for the most part are pretty balanced, but if we have to put someone there, I think she possibly is the worst, at least for clearing the mission. She is a ton of fun to play and I personally love her for solo play, but if we're talking about her compared to the other heroes in a team for the OLT, she is just missing a lot. Let me explain why. For starters, her heroics aren't great. Her decoy ability is up there for one of the weakest, most pointless abilities in the game. It can be useful to teleport to when you are in a bad spot, but apart from that it sucks if you have a team of S and A tier characters with you. They won't even need the decoy. Her ultimate is the same no matter what variation of it you use. It's just really low damage, and honestly you deal more damage not using it and just blasting scatter shot arrows at people. Her teleport arrow, which I generally switch out for the vortex that pulls all the enemies in, is fantastic and work great when paired up with the other heroes, but unfortunately that just isn't enough for me to place her higher than any of the other heroes. Again, just to reiterate, I don't think she's bad, but when comparing her to the others it's hard to rate her higher. The honest best way to play her is just to spam scatter shot arrows, which against the shielded enemies don't even deal a huge amount of damage. She can solo the prisoner cells though, but doesn't bring anything special for the warbot, so I have to place her in D tier. Moving on to her counterpart Hawkeye, he is on the total other end of the scale and I have to place him up with Thor in S. Hawkeye has a fantastic kit. His split shot arrow does tons of damage and people underestimate his heavy combo finisher, which can deal a ton of damage while sending the enemies flying. On top of that, his heroics are fantastic. Having a heal for your whole team is super useful, and his assault ability, no matter what element you chose, deals tons of damage if you have some valor built into your build. But his holy grail is that ultimate. Applying shock to a room full of enemies is honestly one of the best abilities in the game. It allows you and your team to go crazy with positive status effect damage, deleting hordes of enemies. Did I mention it can also heal you as well? He can solo the prisoner cells and isn't bad at killing the warbats, so he is an easy S tier for me. Hulk is next, one of the most fun characters in the game in my opinion. Unfortunately, he was nerfed some time ago and it has moved him down on my personal tier list. If we were doing this before the nerf, he was up though with Thor. His damage was on another level, but unfortunately, he isn't like that anymore. But I don't think he is bad or even average, so I'm still going to place him at A tier. He has some fantastic R of effect damage and his Stranglehold and Thunderclap heroics still make him a huge damage dealer. On top of that, he is one of, if not the best warbat killing heroes in the game. His Thunderclap can destroy countless vents at once, speeding up that fight immensely. On top of that, he has two separate ways of opening the prisoner cells, solo, making him an excellent choice. So, let's continue to trickle down the tier list and talk about Black Panther, who I'm going to be putting in B tier. Black Panther for me is a jack of all trades but master of none type character. He has everything you would want: good damage with also having some good R of effect combined with some great survivability, but they are all just sort of good but not exceptional. Does he deal some good damage? Yeah, I'd say so, but is it as good as Thor or even Hulk? Hence why for me he is middle of the pack in B tier. He does have some nice heroics with his support healing his team or stunning all the enemies. However, the stun support heroic isn't as useful in the OLT due to all the shields. His ultimate, while lacking in damage, can overcharge all your team, which if you are running with an Iron Man or a Thor can be fantastic. Finally, the spear, while decent again, it isn't dealing any major damage and is just sort of average, solidifying why for me he is B tier. Then we have Captain America, who it really hurts me to place and I know will hurt a lot of other people because he is a fan favorite. I really wish he was better and up the top of the tier list, but I have to put him in C. If this tier list was based on the rest of the game, I would probably move Cap up to B, but the OLT does so much to make his two main builds kind of weak. Let's start with his bread and butter build. A lot of people use the Brooklyn Brawler build. The shields all the enemies have make this build really frustrating to use. Because you can't stun them, you will end up getting hit mid-combo, and even if you can pull it off a few combos, the damage just isn't great. On top of that, you can generally only hit one enemy at a time as all his R of effect attacks are really weak. This build can be really strong in other parts of the game simply because there aren't any shields. I have a video in the description of me fighting the new claw enemies in the custom hard room with the hardest possible settings. Max group size with the enemy's power level set at 170 and he clears it with ease. There aren't even enemies in the actual game this hard. So, to all my Cap mains, just a reminder, he is still strong and can clear almost anything in the game no problem. We are just comparing heroes to heroes. Then we have his ranged build, which I personally don't like using and hope the devs can do some balancing for melee builds, because playing Cap and just throwing your shield at everything just feels wrong. I want to be punching stuff in the face with my Cap. However, sadly ranged is more effective and does way more damage. It's not bad, but with the ranged build the heroics aren't as useful, and if we compare him to the other heroes he just doesn't stack up. He struggles to apply the battery effect even though his abilities now do sonic damage when you activate them, for anyone who doesn't know. On top of that, he is one of the only two heroes I couldn't find a way to solo open the prisoner cells with, and he is really slow at killing the war, but he doesn't have the grapple like other heroes, so climbing up and down it can be really slow and annoying while it's moving. The only reason I rate him higher than Kate is purely on he does deal a decent bit more damage that she does, and his support ability Rally Cry can give your teammates some decent buffs. I really wish they would rework Captain America to either give him melee some more power or even rework him to be a leader type character who can help and buff his team more. Either way, I have to place him at C. Next, we have Kamala, who honestly, I have a hard time placing. She has so many different builds and playstyles that ranking her was difficult for me, but I've decided to place her at B tier with Black Panther, She has some fantastic support abilities, the heals, and sort of fits perfect onto any team. Her damage, whether you are using melee or ranged, is pretty good but nothing special. I went back and forth with myself on putting her in A tier, so I tried to think what would be easy, or a team of 4 Hulks or a team of 4 Kamalas. While a team of 4 Kamalas just wouldn't die because they would all be healing each other like crazy and you would definitely have enough damage to clear the mission. I just think it would be 10x slower than a team of 4 Hulks thunderclapping the way though the mission. So, I've placed her at B tier, but at the same time having a Kamala on your team would be preferred over Black Panther, so she end up more being high below A for me. But then this tier list is based off the OLT and she is the other character like Cap who can't solo the prisoner cells while she can hit 2 at once with her assault heroic. That's unfortunately nothing special. She also is sort of weak at killing the war but having similar issues to Cap, which sort of knocks her down and cements her place in B tier. Then we have Widow, who is another hard one to place, and I had the same dilemma as Kamala. Widow can deal some mega damage and is one of the hardest hitting characters in the game. She can solo the prisoner cells and has some abilities that do decent damage to the war but vents. But she doesn't do much in terms of team play apart from turning teammates invisible. Her damage is also very single target based, which for the boss is amazing but not as good for clearing the mission. But I'm still going to place her in A just based on her damage alone. But she is definitely low tier A if we are comparing her to Hulk. He is definitely better for clearing the mission, but she is still ahead of Kamala and Panther in my opinion, so I'm placing her at A. Then finally I saved my main for last, Iron Man. For me he is S, but, in my opinion, he is the worst S tier out of my 3 on this list. He has some of the best single target damage in the game with his rockets and can even do some really good group damage switching out to the lasers. He can solo the cells and can melt the war but with Hulkbuster. For anyone that doesn't know, the laser you get on Hulkbuster from holding down your fire button deals a stupid amount of damage to the objectives and bosses like the warbot. However, he can be very weak if you don't add some survivability like a defense buff into your build compared to Thor and Hawkeye who have it built into their abilities. He can however jump into Hulkbuster whenever he wants. His assault heroic is also amazing, it get generate a boatload of orbs and deal some mega damage. His support heroic can also overcharge and even revive teammates, so that for me lets him keep his place at S tier. So that everyone for the mission, let's now change this around for the boss, as it's a totally different kind of thing to rate the characters on. Some things like damage become way more important against the boss and other things become not important at all. I just want to point out for anyone watching my channel for the first time, I have soloed the Super Adaptoid with every character and I have fought that fucker too many times to count. So, let's just get all these characters out the way. Thor, Iron Man, Black Widow and Hawkeye are all S tier simply on the reason they deal a stupid amount of damage. All these heroes, as I've proven in my other videos, can solo the boss in under 40-50 seconds solo without getting a scratch on them. I could go through each one and explain what it is that makes them deal so much damage, but this video is already long enough and I plan to do full build breakdowns for some of these characters in the future. Honestly, it's hard to rate any of these heroes above the other when it comes to the boss. They all do the same thing, which is kill him stupidly fast and can do it super reliable, usually in my first or sometimes second attempt, which for me makes them all S tier. But I have placed them in order of how fast all my solo kills were. Next, we have Kate Bishop, who makes a huge jump to A tier if we are just talking about my solo builds. However, this is a bit of a strange one. If we were talking about the average damage based Kate Bishop build, she is probably lower down in C or even still in D, but I managed to make a build where she is just invincible the entire fight, basically breaking it. So for me, while she can do that, she has to stay in. It is a slow kill and you could have killed him 3 times by the time she has killed him once with any of the heroes from S tier. But she is invincible. However, the majority of you aren't soloing the boss and are in a team of 4, and in that regard, she deals some of the lowest damage in the game and nearly all her abilities are useless against the Super Adaptoid, so I have to knock her down to B, and she is only the instead of D because of the invincible build I made. If I was making a team of the best 4 Avengers, she would be my literal last pick, but at the same time if I knew I had one try to solo the boss, she is near the top of the list, so she ends up being hard to place, so I'm going to leave her in A, but at the same time she can easily be in D for a different player. Moving on, next we have Hulk, who I'm going to again place in A. He deals some good damage, not as good as the 4 S tiers but still decent, and can be made to be super tanky if you can keep Bone Shaker activated. I have videos on my channel of him soloing and in a team, and he works great in both scenarios. His aura of effect can be great for dealing with all the Adaptoid clones. He can heal through basically all the damage the Adaptoids can deal, making him a solid choice, so I'm putting him at A. Next let's talk about Kamala. I'm placing her in B tier. If I was making this tier list before the Tachin Surge nerf, she would have been a huge contender for S tier, but she lost a huge amount of damage when they nerfed that perk, and she went from being able to melt the Adaptoid super easy to it being much more of a struggle. I know a lot of people are going to be thinking she is great because of her ability to revive and heal, but when we are looking at this from the point of view of comparing her to the other characters, it's not even relevant. Yeah, she can heal, but if you have a team of 4 using all the S tiers, the boss will be dead so fast that Kamala's heal and revives become pointless. She won't even need to heal if the boss is dead in 30 seconds. Don't get me wrong, she still deals some great damage, but it's not as good as Hulk or the S tiers, so she has to stay in B for me. I can definitely see Kamala being more of an S or A tier for the upcoming raiders. Helpfully we won't be able to kill the boss in 30 seconds, so her healing will become much more useful. So, Kamala mains, don't worry, I just think there hasn't been content hard enough for her to truly shine yet. Black Panther is next, and he is in the same boat as Kate Bishop. With my build you can be fully invincible with him, but unlike Kate, he deals a bit more damage and has a lot more abilities and perks that can help his team. For example, his ultimate and a specific skill, he can overcharge all his teammates. This can be super powerful for Iron Man, for example. However, his damage is still on the low side, and that generally is one of the most important factors in this fight, so I have to place him in C tier as he definitely deals less damage and is less useful in a team compared to Kamala. Finally, we have Captain America. When I was soloing the Super Adaptoid with all the characters, I left Cap for last because I knew he was going to be the hardest, and I was right. The problem with Captain America is, just for starters, his damage is super low. With my max precision ranged build you would have to throw the shield over 4 times to even equal one of Iron Man's rockets, and unfortunately his melee builds deal even less. On top of that, getting a reliable battery effect on Cap just isn't great. Yes, you can use the buy more cosmic rockets, but unlike Hulk or Panther, Cap doesn't have a reliable way to heal, so you don't want to be getting hit, so those perks go out the window, so you end up relying on your team to proc the battery effect when nearly every other character in the game can do it all by themselves reliably. The other problem with Cap is he is lacking any sort of utility that makes up for his low damage. For example, everyone else lower on this tier list like Kate, Panther or even Hulk have some sort of ability or something in their kit you can use to make up for the lack of damage. Captain America, in my opinion, actually has better damage than everyone who isn't in S tier when in a team, but he is the worst in nearly every other department. I love Captain America. He was actually my first character I got to 150. I think there is a video on my channel somewhere as proof of that, but unfortunately for me he has become one of the worst in the game, at least for the Super Adaptoid. Please remember, we are only talking about the Super Adaptoid in this tier list. In the rest of the game, Cap can actually be a beast. So that's pretty much everyone. Hopefully in the upcoming claw raid we can see some of the low tier characters actually have a use, and the mission not just be about who can deal the most damage. If you have any comments or want to discuss, or maybe even have a different opinion than me, please leave a comment below, as I actually really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. However, if this video turns toxic and people are arguing in the comments, I'm just going to either remove your comment, or if there is enough of them, delete the video. So, please, if you do want to discuss, keep it civil. At the end of the day, You can complete this mission with any 4 combination of the characters and none of them are bad. There is just some that are better than other, and ranking them in a tier list like this is just supposed to be a bit of fun and maybe a guide for people who are struggling with the mission. Speaking of, I'm working on a full beginner's guide for the Super Adaptoid with everything I know to hopefully help some of you guys out who are struggling. I plan to do the same thing for when the raid releases, so if that sort of stuff interests you, stay tuned to the channel. Thanks for watching.